Oh my God, honey, I had no idea I hit you so hard. How bad is it? 7 stitches, Julie. What did you expect when you hit me in the back of the head with that heavy lamp? You could have killed me. If I expected Julie to show remorse, I was disappointed. She stared at me, chin upturned, with defiance in her eyes. Well, what did you expect me to do when I came home early and found you in our bed? I mean, our bed, having sex with woman? I forced myself to look into the eyes of the woman I had so cruelly betrayed. Her eyes reflected a multitude of emotions. I saw defiance, anger, shock, and confusion all vying for dominance on one face. The defiance disappeared briefly, and a tear rolled down the cheeks of the woman I had loved more than my own life for 15 years. I felt I must be silent before her, and gathered my courage to face her justified anger. Who was that? Karen? What? Your new secretary? The one you told me about less than a month ago that she was, and I quote, ordinary? I didn't deny that I lied to my wife. I lied through gritted teeth. My gaze returned to the wooden surface between us. The huskiness in her voice at the next words made it clear that Julie was holding back sobs. How old is she? She turned 28 yesterday. Do you know when her birthday is? There was obvious shock and pain in her voice, and I chose to remain silent. There was no point in making her feel worse. Oh my God, so what had I witnessed? A 39-year-old man giving a birthday present to a psychotic bitch with daddy issues? Once again, I chose to remain silent. What was the point of telling her that Karen had discreetly but persistently started stalking her boss, me, shortly after she was hired? Ever since my faithful old secretary June had retired 6 months ago. It was June who interviewed and eventually recommended Karen. Her flirting was so subtle that naive old me didn't even notice a thing. A couple weeks ago, Karen brought it to my attention so I could finally see all the episodes and moments from a new perspective. How long has this been going on? This was the first time, Julie, honestly. Julie looked me over critically. I answered her with a hard stare, unafraid of being caught in a lie. Yesterday was the first time Karen and I physically crossed the line. How unlucky were Karen and I? We had just stripped and were rubbing against each other as awkwardly as only two people, nervous and unfamiliar with each other's bodies, can, when I heard my wife's hurt squeal just before the lights went out. Just then I was in Julie and I's marital bed, and the next moment I was in an uncomfortable hospital bed with anything but what you call a terrible headache. Julie's eyes searched my eyes for the truth. I did her the courtesy of holding eye contact until she was satisfied. I noticed the moment when she recognized I was being honest, when the anger quickly disappeared to be replaced by what? Insecurity? A feeling that must be almost automatic in every cheating spouse. Just one moment you thought you knew your spouse, your world, and to some extent your future. The next moment the ground is knocked out from under your feet and nothing is as you thought it would be. The word quicksand comes to mind. Anything but solid ground, more like a whole pile of crap that you fall through and sink into. Immediately, questions arise. What did I do wrong? How inadequate was I? Where did I go wrong? These feelings must have been crushing her, and I was the cause of it. The questions tormenting her are also my fault. I let her have the conversation, later followed by the apology I thought I should have given her. I know I've been bitchy for months, Steve, sullen and aloof with you and the kids, but it was because of the impending promotion at work. You knew that. Oh, I knew it all too well. Julie and 3 of her co-workers were battling each other, competing for one job opening, a significant promotion. The other 3 were unmarried and had no children. Julie explained that in her new position, work hours would not be as regular as in her current position. She could be expected to stay for half an hour or until midnight when the need to meet a deadline arose. She wanted to impress the manager and show him that being a wife and mother would not interfere, although I pointed out that it would. Stubborn Julie, of course, could not accept this. Instead, she went head over heels in impressing her boss, despite the damage it was doing to her relationship with me and her children. The new norm for Julie was now to stay at work for an hour or two, pile into the house to eat whatever I had prepared, and then retire to the office to do homework until the kids went to bed. Heck, quite often I'd fall asleep before she finished. On Saturdays, Julie was often either off to the office or working from home, which meant she needed a break every Sunday and was as grumpy as a cat that sat on a wire brush. If all 4 hopeful applicants worked as hard as Julie did, the boss got a lot of work done for free. I know I've neglected you and the kids, Steve. I know that, aside from a few quick hookups when you pissed me off, we weren't, close for a while, but that was going to end soon. You knew that. The promotion will be announced at the end of the month. If I get the position, I'll only have to come back to work a couple times a week and go on trips every now and then. If I don't get it, I'll tell Mark where he can shove his fucking job. Given your thriving business, I can afford to spend my time looking for something else. There was silence again, and we stared at each other for a moment that seemed to last for hours rather than seconds. All the while, Julie clutched both my hands in hers. After breaking eye contact, she looked over my shoulder and let go of my hands as if they had burned her, and quickly put hers back in her lap under the table. I was briefly distracted by my throbbing headache and unconsciously reached out and felt the bandage on my head. I simultaneously wished it was wound tighter and looser, anything to ease the pain. Had I been so inconsiderate that I'd pushed you into the arms of another? I didn't say anything. I had already tried and failed to align my recent behavior with the belief system I had held since I was old enough to make my own judgments. There is no excuse for betraying those who deserve your trust. Julie's thoughts and emotions were obviously running back and forth, if her facial expression was to be believed. She was a woman who had been betrayed with all the pain, insecurity, and anger that inevitably follows. There was silence between us. Do you have any idea how I feel, Steve? To come home early, to what was supposed to be a safe haven in my home, into the comforting arms of my husband, to find him in my bed with his fucking secretary? I mean, he's too stingy to shell out for a cheap motel room and too insensitive to screw a whore in some other room in the house. You should have destroyed our sanctuary with your disgusting behavior, your treachery. You know I'll never sleep in that bed again, don't you? I just kept my expression neutral and lowered my eyes. I realized that tears were spurting from Julie's eyes again by her sobbing and the roughness of her voice. It's not fair, Steve. How can I compete with her? I saw that her breasts were bigger than mine. You always told me mine were fine. Remember what you always told me when we were newlyweds? That more than what fits in your hand is excessive? You lied? You wanted to hold some other man's fours? Or was it her firm little tummy? Yeah. I saw it too when she jumped off the bed so I wouldn't hit you with the lamp again. What was that shit she used to pin me down while she was calling the police? I was going to say Krav Maga, a mix of boxing, martial arts, and street fighting developed by the Israeli Defense Forces. Karen is an expert. It's the same fighting technique Matt Damon uses in all the Jason Bourne movies. That's why she wasn't afraid of you after you knocked me out. But Julie was on a roll. Yeah, fit and slim, not like me, right? I got a soft belly after carrying your babies. You're fucking kids, Steve. I know I've put on a little weight lately. I haven't been eating right and I'm too tired to go to the gym. I'll fix all that when this is all over. Julia stopped, breathing heavily. I pondered whether I should defend myself at this point. Should I tell her that she had interrupted Karen and me before I cheated on her, so to speak? I decided against it. We were both naked, and the intent was certainly as good or bad as the action, according to my thinking. I decided to let Julie vent her anger until she was done. Perhaps it would be some comfort to her to know that she was wrong. Nothing she had mentioned about her looks compared to Karen's had influenced my decision to sleep with Karen, although she was right. Interfering with my defense was what Julie must have heard just before she caught us saying, "God, Karen, you're so beautiful." Julie must have read my mind. You've often said that to me, she said as her unfocused eyes looked back 15 years. She quickly focused again, and Julie's determination returned. This relationship, our relationship, is now unbalanced. You have no idea what the shit I saw yesterday does to a person. How soul-crushing and ego-destroying it is. How it hurts. It's worse than being stabbed. Until you feel exactly what I feel, our relationship isn't going anywhere. So here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna pick up some young stud and have him in our bed. I don't care who it is, just like I don't care if he's younger than you, slimmer than you, and able to last longer. And you know what? You're going to sit there damn still and watch him, pressing me into our mattress. I'm going to keep doing it until I decide that you've experienced exactly the same pain as I have. If you don't agree to this, I'll file for divorce and take everything you own, and maybe you'll be lucky enough to see your precious children for a couple days every other week. How does it feel to be attacked by someone you love, asshole? She stopped, breathing heavily. The stroppy woman my loving wife had turned into over the past few months had indeed returned. Saliva flew as her fear and insecurity turned to rage. Realizing that in her anger she was abandoning morality with her unilateral decisions, she forced herself to calm down again. I can't believe you made our bed like that, Steve. What say after I get my revenge, when you really realize how devastated I am, we go out and buy a new mattress, huh? This time she clearly wanted me to contribute to the conversation. I contemplated whether to start by saying, yes, I know what it's like to be attacked by someone you love and I have the stitches to back it up. But that was too cheap. It left me with so many possibilities. Where were you going to screw Mark, Julie? My wife's hands quickly hit the bottom edge of the table in an attempt to reach her chin before it hit the tabletop. What? It's not a hard question, Julie. Your boss, Mark. The man who was right behind you when you walked into our bedroom last night. Where were you going to fuck him this time? In our bed like you usually do? Tell me, whose idea was it? His? Did he enjoy the thought of sleeping with you in the bed we shared? Or was it you? Was it your idea to humiliate me? To know that I slept on the bed you defiled with another man? Julie's mouth opened and closed like a guppy fish on steroids. You don't need to show me what it's like to witness someone you loved and trusted for years stab you in the back. That moment came for me when I left work early one day when I felt sick. You should be able to remember the exact date, except you were too focused on getting that promotion. What was your logic, Julie? I may not have all the natural advantages of my competitors, but I can show him that this mature woman can give him something they can't. And before you ask, yes, I know what it's like to see your partner with someone younger, fitter, and from what you said that I overheard when I got to the bedroom, what was it? Oh yeah, you're better than my hubby. I'm assuming he's, more blessed than I am. Now it was my turn to stop and breathe heavily. The anger, burning and red-hot to the core. What I felt that day, and while reviewing the notes that followed, still hadn't cooled. It didn't take long to rekindle the flames of rage. At least the anger masked the pain. The slightest thought of Julie's betrayal was like sprinkling salt on an open wound. Damn it, feel it. Karen's reaction when I confided in her in a moment of pain was outrage. When I then showed her the tapes, her reaction was much the same as mine. I was touched that she was angry and offended with me. The fact that she was glad that she was finally able to admit her interest in developing a relationship with me was extremely soothing to my ego. When did you get so stupid, Julie? You don't think the girls in your office saw what you were doing? Hell, Julie. 2 of the other applicants that I know of have also been in Mark's bed in the last 6 weeks. His wife can now get footage of the 3 of you at any time. For the record, Karen and I were close enough just yesterday to teach you a little lesson, but I'm sure we'll change that as soon as we can. She's home now, getting to know Jen and Lauren. They were getting along great when I left. They've been lacking female attention since you pulled away so emotionally. Karen wants kids, they want an interested mother. Sounds like a win-win to me. I could see Julie's eyes practically spinning from everything I was saying. The sight was not a pleasant one. For old memory, I waited and said nothing. But Steve, I did it just for us. This promotion brings in an extra $20,000 a year. Think what it could do for us. I don't have to think, Julie. I've seen what it does for us. It made you a Megillah who was hard to live with and turned you into a whore, and it destroyed our home. With the first confirmation that her decisions threatened her family, Julie's hands snaked out from under the table and reached for mine, squeezing them tightly. The guard who monitored visitors in the holding cells walked over and spoke loudly. No physical contact. I let you get away with it once, Mrs. Brown. Don't push your luck. Remove your hands or you will be returned to your cell immediately. Julie looked down at her orange jumpsuit as if she had just remembered where she was. She looked at me pleadingly. Get me out of here, please, Steve. What? And not give Karen a chance to meet our kids? But I'm your wife, Steve. You have to forgive me. Take me back. Why, Julie? Why take back someone I'll never trust again? Why give my children to someone who jeopardizes their emotional well-being over a little thing like money? Then fuck you, Steve. When I get out, I'll make sure you and your whore never see my kids again. I smiled and shook my head sadly. Now that that was okay with her, they were her children. Oh, Julie, wake up and smell the dog shit. Unless you find some other idiot to bail you out, you're staying here until your trial. Then, according to my lawyer, the assault will almost certainly be followed by a prison sentence. You won't get the full 7 years under the statute, but even probation will mean no child custody. I watched the horror of the woman I once loved, realizing that instead of being here to bail her out and explain to the jailers that this was all a mistake, it was in my best interest to press charges, using Karen as a witness to keep her here. Here, which put her at the end of the line for money and lawyers, not to mention any post-divorce benefits. The sight was not a pleasant one. Gone was the arrogance based on the assumption that she would soon be out to subject me to suffering as a cuckold. In its place was the sudden realization that she should have used the time she spent threatening to humiliate me to beg me to bail her out. Suddenly she looked really, really bad. Should I tell her that what she witnessed between Karen and me was just a setup to provoke her? That my one slip-up with Karen won't happen again? That I'll follow my moral code, at least until we're legally separated? Should I tell her that courts rarely sentence assault these days, especially if the fit of rage was provoked, as in her case? Hell no! Let her fear of being locked up with a bunch of lesbians be part of her punishment. After all, she committed 2 of the worst crimes in my law book, destroyed something beautiful between us, and jeopardized the emotional well-being of our children, damage I've sought to minimize by spending almost all of my efforts on it. Come on, Julie. Accept that you gambled and lost. Now you're getting a divorce. Accept that you screwed up willingly, and maybe when you get out, the girls will still want to have something to do with you. Get in the fight, and I'm pretty sure you'll lose them forever. In fact, I'll make sure of it. Goodbye, Julie. I loved you once upon a time. With those words, Steve stood up and walked to the barred door to the visitor's room. The guard let him out, and without looking back, he headed to his car, smiling at the thought of the 3 beautiful girls waiting for him at home. Stepping out of the holding cell, Steve hurried to the car he'd arrived in, its driver lying on the hood, enjoying the late morning rays. Hey, wake up! How'd it go for you? About as well as you predicted. Threats. Thought she had the moral high ground, blah, blah, blah. Well, now she knows where she stands with me. You know, all in all, it was very soothing, just like you said. Thank you, brother. What big brothers are for? Thanks anyway, Dave.